Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Oh, it's as if you guys knew we were starting. Wonderful. Welcome. Nikos, how are you? Good. Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to our audit committee meeting. Thank you again for readjusting your schedule to meet virtually for our final meeting of the school year. So with that, we're going to just dive on into it. Hopefully at this point, all of you have received the agenda. If you remember from our last meeting, we had a presentation from our internal auditors regarding the cybersecurity assessment. And Ms. O'Hara had some action items that she was taking forth to work with Ryan Maloney, and she's going to be updating that to us at this time. So Kathy, if you want to take that over.
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. So at our last audit committee meeting, we discussed cybersecurity. Since then, Jessica and I have met with Ryan Maloney, our Director of Technology, as well as Christine Weiss. She is our Data Privacy Officer. They have received quotes on the various items that we discussed, and the district plans to move forward with those. Ryan has some funds that he can use to cover some of these issues, and then we'll find additional funds as well, because as we discussed, they are important areas to look at. There is also a corrective action plan that Mr. Maloney and Ms. Weiss have been working on as well with our internal auditor. So we will be following up on that as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that update. And I just want to remind everyone, due to the sensitivity and the nature of the content, that's why in this public portion of the meeting, we really have to protect the security of what we're doing, and only a few people have access to it. But we are happy to see that the priorities that were presented are being looked at and corrective action plans are being moved forward. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. We look forward to hearing more about it. And I would assume, Kathy, then, as we move forward on those and they're going to be implemented for future audit committee meetings, we'll just, if we have to go into executive session to discuss them more, you'll brief the committee on that so that we can make sure it's moving forward.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So we have that on our long-term agenda, always cybersecurity now. Adam, yes, do you have a question?
Yeah, it totally makes sense that we wouldn't discuss publicly, I guess, what we're actually doing or following up with it. And I don't even know that it would make sense for us to review that in executive session, but will the auditor be giving us some kind of like closure report or progress report, just so that, I guess, like how does the committee kind of check this off our list after the long-term kind of tickler item expires?
Sure. So what typically happens, the auditor, he'll do a risk assessment update each year, as well as a focused area of concentration. So what's going to happen is every time he does that risk assessment, he's going to update you about the progress of the cybersecurity, as well as, I think we had things on capital from prior reports. So he'll continue to update it until those are closed items.
I'm also going to add, the auditor did provide, and we're putting it on public agenda for our Board of Education meeting, and a summary that is able to be presented to the public that outshares what the findings were in an appropriate manner. And this is a document that can be shared with any of state ed and things of that nature that they need to share it with. So that document will also be followed up and presented publicly for the Board of Education and the community. Anyone else have any other questions regarding that? Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys on that. We're going to have, for the next item on our agenda, we're talking about priorities of discussions for 22-23. We had somewhat discussed this. What we're using this meeting for is to plan and be more proactive for the following year. As you know, this year, we kind of reorganized ourselves and tried to put business together. We're showing our audit committee meetings publicly, which we haven't done in the past. We redid our charter, which will be put on the reorg in July for approval along with the members. And for next year, we will again take the oath that we unfortunately did not take, but we will take moving forward. So we will do all of that. And so in part of that process, we wanted to set the priorities for the discussion and the calendar dates for next year so that we can really dive into everything. I don't have any specific requests or requirements other than, I don't know, Ms. O'Hara, do you know if we have typically been provided with like a multi-year work plan from our internal or external auditors? I know we do get the presentation in October and we utilize that for our corrective action plan, but do we have a more in-depth multi-year plan that we can look at and maybe see how things are going with that?
Sure. So each year the auditors provide their risk assessment, and in there is a document that lists based on high. It kind of looks like this. I don't know if you can see it, but it gives like rankings of the risk is high, just like inherently it's high, and it shows areas that you have done in prior years. So that's something that we could look at. There's things I'm trying to see. We've already looked at accounting and reporting, budget development. We had that budget monitoring and reporting, also governance and planning that was also done in a prior year. There's areas such as grants that could be looked at. Your school lunch program, which is a moderate level, not exactly high, but they've looked at construction planning already, purchasing and related expenditures. They have looked at that in the past. Also, benefits is another area that is inherently a high risk, but because of the controls that are put in place, they believe it's a low risk. So I know we had discussed in the beginning of the year, I believe we discussed the buildings and the safety and what we were doing to mitigate the effects, like because we had Hurricane Ida and that caused quite a bit of damage to us. So I'm not sure if there's other members that they had items that they were looking at, if they wanted to discuss.
Does anyone else have any other items that they'd like to ask about? Adam, you have a question?
Julie, there was something you had suggested to me a couple months ago when we were talking. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, so we talked about operations for facility use agreements and roster fees.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up at the end. Thank you for reminding me. So we could definitely look at something like that as well, if that's something that the committee thinks would be beneficial for us. Anyone have? So before let's take all the items. Kathy's laid out a list of some of them, and let's take all the items and then maybe narrow it down. Bob, you have something? Oh, you're muted still, sorry.
Just because it's in the news, I don't know if we need to take another look at building security from a safety point of view. You know, whether if that's been done recently or whether that needs a fresh look.
All right, that's a good idea. Adam, do you have one?
I actually was going to say the same thing as Bob.
Okay, that's good. Anyone else?
In terms of cyber, I always think of cyber IT and then the related insurance. So I look at that as the overall risk. I don't know if we think about that separately or not. But, you know, to the extent cyber does fail, we have to have a carrier who helps us and supports us. So I don't know how that gets evaluated annually by the district.
Actually, they did focus on that. I believe, Jessica, was it 2 cycles ago? They did look at our cyber insurance, and we've updated it to make sure that it's the correct type of coverage. And we actually met with Ryan Maloney and Christine Weiss to go over all of that just as recently as I think like 2 weeks ago. We've been over it. So that's a good question and good point.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyone else have any other ideas that they want to look at other than the ones that have been presented? Okay, great. So what I have here from the recommendations, we talked about facility use agreements and roster fees. Building security, I don't know the last time building and safety security was reviewed from a operational standpoint, but you did have, you know, even under that building and safety as far as mitigation was concerned as well. So maybe that would be a very big, I don't know if it's too big of a heading, but maybe we could say building and safety, both from a mitigation factor, but also from a safety and security factor, and look at that as one big heading. Grants, school lunch program, purchasing and benefits. So personally, I think as a committee, since we're kind of just getting this started, maybe if we want to pick two, I don't know what's a reasonable ask of our internal auditors and business operations. Kathy, did you have any?
Yes, typically it's two specific areas. Like this year we had two, but then cybersecurity we felt was very important, so we put everything to cybersecurity. I personally think the security issues is one that would be very beneficial to the district, because I know the cabinet, we've already been speaking about our security and what does it look like? Is it where it should be? Can we add more? You know, so I think that would be very beneficial. And also the facilities use, I think that is also another area that would help bring consistency to the process. So we could have somebody look at it. It would be very beneficial.
Okay. Would you, just out of curiosity, would you also look, if we were looking at building security, would we look at some of those mitigation factors that we made for safety, as far as not security, as far as, I guess, threats such as hurricanes, storms, whatever? You would also look at that in the same regard as well?
You wouldn't really, because I think that would be too broad of a scope.
Okay.
But we have been meeting each week with FEMA as well as people from the state, and we have mitigation processes that we've already had our architects looking at with us, and we've come up with an estimate. So that is an area that we're focusing on. So maybe once all of that work is complete, like in another year, we could look at that to make sure everything was covered. So we are working on it. So I think if we focused on these other two areas, that would be more beneficial, in my opinion.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you. What does everyone else, can I get a sense of the committee, I guess, to see if we look at those two items? How do you all feel? Of course, I got a thumbs up from Adam Smith. Everyone else, Nico's, Bob, Adam Block, Jim, are you okay with that? Okay, great. So it sounds like we've got our priorities for discussion. And of course, we're always going to have something from our audit that they will reveal also externally or internally also and externally for us moving forward. Okay, that's great. See, that was very easy. Thank you, guys. This is wonderful. You're such a lively group online here. Look at you. All right, so look at how we're moving on. Just the next item. Now we have the audit committee dates for next year. So we have committed that we need to have a minimum of 4. So I suggest, if possible, if we could just pick 4 dates that we would like to at least put on the calendar. I know it's planning long-term, but if we could at least get it out there, and then we would know what we need to do. But before we pick the dates, I just have a quick question. Kathy, do you remember, I think we still have 1 year left before we have to renegotiate our contract and start looking at that with our internal and external auditors, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So that wouldn't be for this upcoming.
No, it would be
the
for the following year.
Okay, so that being said, I know that we get a report usually that we need to discuss before an October board meeting. So I don't know if we have an idea, or if we just want to say tentatively sometime, we can wait and schedule a date sometime in September, early October, before the board meeting, when we would have the presentation by the auditors, but we would want to review all that information beforehand. I don't know if you have that date yet from them, or if.
No, typically it's like October 15th is when reports are due up to the state. So the external auditor will want to speak with you as well. They are starting their interim work. So the external auditor looks at our financials and our year-end closing. So they're starting their interim work next week. They'll be here. So they had actually inquired if there was going to be an audit committee meeting, but she may just ask to speak with one of the members or the chairperson. So, but if we could do it before October 15th, obviously that would be good, but kind of close to it, I think, because they'll still be preparing their reports.
Okay. So then that being said, maybe we could look at the week before October 15th, which is like the week of the 3rd. So if we wanted to, maybe well, Wednesdays are sometimes, wait, today's a Wednesday. We could look at doing either like a Wednesday or Thursday. Tuesday meetings is there a day of the week that's better for the committee than not? Let's start there.
Wednesday is usually good for me.
Wednesday's better for the business office too.
Okay.
Wednesday works for me.
Perfect. Okay, so let's tentatively put 10-5 on there then. That's the Wednesday, if that's good. And then from there, I think we could just do what worked for us, at least, it seemed, was we did a January meeting. We did an April meeting and a June meeting, which if we want to stay with that same focus, a January, an April, and a June, it seems like those are times when we can at least have enough time to get information, see corrective action plans being presented, and then review recommendations afterwards. Does that, with the business office, and also still, I know the business office is very busy with budget season, so this still doesn't overly occupy them and it balances that calendar as well. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. That's great.
Okay. Everyone else seem like that's fair? Yes. Okay, great. So then that being set for all of this, 10-5. So January, we could just look at like the 11th of January. I'm just picking random dates right now at this point. And again, we can play with this. And maybe for April, maybe the end of the month in April would be better because it will be after the budget has to be submitted, after we.
I'm sorry to go back to January. When do we typically have the board meetings? Are those like the second Tuesday of the month? Because
So
we have a board meeting on the 10th, sometimes having a 9 o'clock meeting the next day
is tough. So
yeah.
yes, we do have a meeting on the 10th. You are exactly right. So, and the 24th.
Okay, so maybe would the 18th be okay?
It's fine with me. Anyone else have a problem with it? Oh, wait, the 18th. Yeah, we're fine because we're still not a break then. Okay, great. And then if
Julie,
we
you
look-
lost me. Which month are we talking about?
we went back to January, so
Yeah.
January 18th.
Okay.
Okay, great. And then the other one would be April. Maybe we could look at the 26th. Does that seem good to everyone?
Yeah.
And then maybe June. Our last meeting is June 6th of the Board of Education next year. So potentially then maybe we could make an exception and do like a June 1st meeting, which is a Thursday, but maybe a June 1st meeting just so that we could go ahead, or we could look at the 31st, which is the Wednesday. I'm okay with either one. Actually, we could do the 31st. It's just nice to be able to report back to the board if we need any action in that sense.
The
So maybe
31st would be good. We have construction meetings in the mornings on Thursdays, like
Okay.
9 until like 10. That's fine.
Okay, so then the dates I have here are 10-5. These are all Wednesdays. 18th of January, April 26th, and May 31st. And is 9 a.m. still a good time period? We will be meeting in person. We will not have the option necessarily to meet via live stream because we'll be after that June 8th date. So I just want to make sure we're sensitive to everyone's schedule. Okay. So that's great. Wonderful. All right, so then that's what we have for those 4 dates. And again, these are preliminary. We can modify if we needed. And Kathy, if we find that our external auditors need to meet with someone or the committee, we can always convene a meeting if needed. So that's not a problem. We just had to commit to a minimum of 4. So it's great. Excuse me. Last but not least, I just wanted, unless anyone else had any new business, does anyone have any new business? No. Last but not least, in an effort of this trying to, realign ourselves and, again, like I said, do our charter, we, are going to be taking the oath next year and moving forward in a very progressive manner. I just had a few housekeeping questions to ask. So as we know from the beginning, most of you that are from the community have been on this committee and served very diligently for some of you decades, some of you for multiple years. And per our charter, it's a 3-year term. I personally feel that for the upcoming year, we should definitely keep all of you on if the group agrees. I want to get a sense from this group that we should keep you on just for consistency's sakes, because we're just really kind of catching our stride and it would be nice and easy. But per our charter, we have the ability to add additional members because we're at 7 right now. So we set a maximum of 9. If we think it would be appropriate, we could extend out the application process so that we could accept 2 new members if we get anyone. What this would allow for is that we could then cycle some of our more senior members off eventually if we have interest. And then we wouldn't be left with nobody on the committee. We would still have some people on the committee in that regard. So looking forward, does anyone have any suggestion or do you agree with this idea and philosophy?
I think that's a
Good idea, because a year from now, I would probably be ready to cycle off.
Okay, that's great. That's good to know. Does everyone else feel like that's a good plan?
Sounds like it would work to me.
Okay, yeah, this is like the easiest group to meet with. Okay, fantastic. Wonderful. Okay, so what we'll do is then, I think the best part of it is, as I said, on July 12th for reorg, we will list the committee members that are established. We'll put the charter on there. All of that will get approved. But in August, we'll send out the application for the committees. And again, I'm going to present this to the board, make sure the board is all right with this. This is a recommendation of this committee. We'll present it to the board that in August we'd send out to the community, see if anyone was interested, and we're looking to fill 2 spots and we would fill them before our 10-5 meeting. So this would be our recommendation that we're bringing to the Board of Ed for our June 7th meeting. So I don't know that they'll have such a problem with it. And then we are checking with council still and waiting to hear back from them. We anticipate at that first meeting is when we'll be able to take an oath of each member, and that will not be done at reorg, which is on July 12th. But if that changes, we will certainly let all of you know. If you can make yourselves available, we'll take care of that. But I just wanted to let you know that that's out there. All right. Unless anyone else has any other new business or I've missed something, I think we've really set ourselves up very nicely for a very productive year next year. And I appreciate everyone's working hard and moving forward on it. Anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Again, such a talkative group here. Okay.
Wait, Julie, I actually have a question.
Yeah.
So the items that we just discussed that we're going to use for next year, is there kind of like summer work or things that are going to happen to be prepared for next year, or are we just kind of like putting it aside until next year? Like, is there action items for the auditor and the district that we're going to start hearing about, or are we? I just want to kind of understand where we're leaving it.
So we had 2 recommendations come out of this committee. The first recommendation is that next year we would like to utilize the audit committee to look internally at our 2 priorities that we established, the facility use agreement and building security. As long as the board is in alignment with that, then that would give a directive that we could ask our internal auditors to start looking at that, and they would begin that as part of their time frame. Kathy would give that direction to them. And then the second recommendation is sending out the applications for the membership to increase our membership to 9 if we're able to find participants. So there will be, in my mind, depending on time, Kathy would be giving this work to our internal auditors to start and begin looking at so that they could then present it to us. I would think they would probably be presenting it to us in our January meeting, some sort of report, unless they tell us otherwise that they would not be able to, if they would need more time.
Right. So I would have a conversation with our internal auditors, letting them know the two areas. And they'll let us know based on their schedules when they could come and do the field work. They may elect to look at operations and facility use first, like over the summer, and then look at security issues when school is back in session in September. You know, so, but I'll have a conversation with them this week and I'll let them know that these are the areas we want to focus on. And then they'll let us know what their scope of work will be.
Okay. And we're certain that our auditors like have the expertise for like security, for example, and that they wouldn't need to bring in a different consultant for that.
Well, that's a conversation we'll have with them to find that out. And if they do need to, I would assume that they would bring experts in. I know that other schools have had these done. At my former school, we also did as well. And you'd be surprised what they do. They'll knock on doors to see if students or staff will open the doors.
Great.
You know, so it's a very thorough process.
Great. Sounds much needed.
Yeah, I just one other question, because I do this in my day job. I have auditors and I have audit committee meetings, but I'm on the public side, not the school district side. So one of the requirements is executive session. So do the auditors report directly to the board without this committee? And then they just talk about the team, the infrastructure and things like that? That's like the best practice that's got it done in the public world.
I don't
So this is-
believe that they have, Julie.
In my
So for
experience-
yes.
in my
So for
experience-
example, the entire management team, I'm one of them. We have to leave the call and then the auditors go directly to the board in executive session. There's nothing really to be discussed, but if there ever was, that's like a best practice.
So as an audit committee, we're allowed to call an executive session. And how we've been functioning as an audit committee is a little different this year. I think that the move that we should try and go to is, I think that this committee should review the information in executive session. And then again, the recommendations based on that would be taken to the board. If the board would need to meet with any of our auditors, then again, in a separate executive session, because they had further questions that they needed to ask, we could certainly make that happen. But I do think we should start utilizing this committee as a more oversight, right? Really taking the time to have that oversight to ask those questions and focus on it. So, and that's one of the things I would like to see us try and move towards. So to your point, I think if everyone's in agreement, I would like to have that we would have them present first to this committee in an executive session. And then if the Board of Education has more questions, they can certainly, call their own executive session once recommendations have been made. If everyone's in agreement.
My observation is this is what I have to do in the public. I don't know if it applies to school districts. So
Right. I can ask further. I mean, we can ask council too, but from my understanding, I just actually was having a very lengthy conversation with NISBA about audit committees. And there's a lot of flexibility as far as how they can be structured. I mean, the audit committee, it could just be the Board of Education is what we could include, right? So it could just be the Board of Education and they just review everything and we don't have any community members. We've decided to set it up where we do have community members on and kind of have that experience and knowledge, which a lot of other schools do. So I think we should utilize the expertise that all of you provide. It's so in that regard, and then we still have board representation and the Board of Education still has the final say.
I guess, Julie, the bottom line is that the answer is we are going to go in executive session to get the results.
Yes, just like we did for
it's just going to be this committee, not
right.
the board.
And Jim, I guess you weren't here for the last one. Our last cybersecurity meeting, we held that as an executive session. So there were no cameras, there were no nothing, and we discussed all the sensitive material, privately.
Right, okay.
What about inviting board members to attend our executive session?
We could certainly do that. We would just have to do that by resolution, procedurally. So, but that's certainly something we could do if we wanted to save a step. It's not a problem.
And there'll always be 3 to 4 board members here anyway, so we can always bring that back.
Right.
Just some may want to hear firsthand and if they have any questions. So you offer it to them and, maybe 1 or 2 will show up.
We wouldn't have issues with quorum then, Julie?
As long, again, we have to do it by resolution,
Yeah.
we would have an issue. So if we were what we would do procedurally is we would just ask if we were going to be presenting this, if any of the board members wanted to attend, we could just quickly put a resolution out there, have it so that they can attend. It's just, again, a procedure.
We have to notice it and everything, but
Mhm,
it should,
mhm.
yeah.
All right, these are great questions. You guys are really livening up, see? All right, anything else? Wonderful. And then I would also just say, I had one more thought in all of these great discussions. Kathy, I think for next year as well, as part of our practice, I know that you update the board on corrective actions based on internal and external auditors. I'd like to see that we also include this committee then before committee meetings. We'll make sure to include them on those corrective action updates as well, so they can be informed and apprised and ask their questions, since that really is part of our role and responsibility as well. And we'll marry that as part of our process. Again, some of these things are new with you, we're learning that we haven't had before, and we're developing as we go as well. Okay. I'm going to go to we do have some community members. We have 2 attendees. I will just see if there are any community comments or questions for our 2 attendees. If you have any questions, you can, I do have a question. Miss Milwani, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, she took her hand down. Oh, it's back up. You can go ahead and, how's that? There you go.
There I go. Hi, I just wanted to make a note that there is no school on October 5th of 2022. There's a scheduled recess for your meeting timing.
Thank you. I don't have that in my calendar yet. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So then we will have to move to another day. Thank you for that, Jessica.
Anytime.
It's good to have someone who's looking at the calendar extension, not an attendee right now. Thank you.
We're deep in pick a date, so.
Yes. Okay, so then maybe we'll look at the 12th, which unfortunately is right after, I know there's a Columbus Day, but is the 12th work out for everyone? Okay, so we'll move that date. Thank you again, Jessica, to the 12th. Did anyone else have any other questions they'd like to bring up, comments? All right, well, with that, I appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great summer. If anything comes up, we'll certainly reach out to you, but really appreciate you guys working with us, all the work of the business office, and kind of putting this all together this year. We look forward to a really productive year next year, and have a great one.
Feel better.
Thank you, Julie.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.